Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today with us, and welcome to this last session of the Education USA Western Hemisphere LLM webinar series. This series of events, they have been put together by our Western Hemisphere region. So welcome for being here. Then there are many countries that are being represented in these events. And well, my name is Yandy Reynoso, and I am one of the advisors from Education USA in Mexico City. Today's session is about personal statement tips for writing your samples, and also about letters of recommendation. Our representatives, they will speak for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will have some time for Q&A. And then after that, you will be able to talk directly to them in their Zoom rooms, in breakout rooms, which will be, the links will be posted here in the chat and also sent to your emails. So welcome everyone, and the time is yours from our guest speakers. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Yandy, and thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. We're just going to go around really quickly and introduce ourselves before we jump into the topics themselves. So I'm Justin Swinsick. I'm the Director of Graduate Programs at University of Chicago Law School.
Hello, everyone. I'm June Sakamoto. I'm the Senior Assistant Dean for Enrollment Management at UC Hastings Law in San Francisco.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Smith. I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Programs at the University of Wisconsin Law School located in Madison, Wisconsin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Goodwin. I'm the Director of Graduate Legal Studies and a professor at Indiana University Maurer School of Law in Bloomington, Indiana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Maurer. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions for LL.M and International Programs at Northeastern University School of Law in Boston, Massachusetts.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Sagala, and I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions at American University Washington College of Law in Washington, D.C.
Hello, everybody. My name is Adriana Vito. I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Studies at the University of Virginia School of Law located in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's nice to see you all here. All right, so I'm going to be the first person presenting. So again, my name is Adriana Vito. I work for the University of Virginia. Bienvenidos, everybody. Sejam bem-vindos para o que vem do Brasil. Eu sou brasileira e bem-vindos a todos que hablan español también. The presentation will be in English, but I wanted to make sure you feel welcome in all of your respective languages. So we're going to be talking about personal statement. And I noticed this is a topic that actually freezes lawyers, even the most eloquent of lawyers, feels very nervous when they see an empty page in front of them and they see the chance of making an impression towards an admissions committee or the admission officers of the programs that they wish to engage in. So I'm here to help you feel a little bit more at ease when it comes to doing your personal statement. And I hope that these tips will be helpful to you. So basically, the personal statement is your chance to let us know who you are. Right? So this is usually one of the first documents that we will read when we open the entire file that we have on you to analyze you as a candidate. There is a triage process at most schools, and we really enjoy reading these documents, and we hope that you can make them interesting so it makes our lives a little bit easier as well. So the first thing you need to think about in order not to feel nervous when you're doing your personal statement is that this is one of the only essays in your life that you will be writing and you know all the answers already. Okay, why do I say that? Because the personal statement is about you as a person, as an individual, and as a professional, as a lawyer. So at this point, don't feel nervous about it because you know who you are. You know the reasons why you're going to be applying for this LL.M program. You know the area of law, most likely, that you want to be in and that you are passionate about. And it's just a matter of articulating it into one page or or 500 words or whatever the limit is that the school gives you in their application instructions. So this is a document that will be very much concise and to the point. And I can speak from my school's perspective. I work for the University of Virginia. We call it UVA for short. So at UVA, we really don't want to see much about what happened in your childhood. I find it strange sometimes when students start by saying, when I was a child, I had an uncle who was a lawyer and I went to court and I felt very inspired. Well, we look at you already as a professional. So we don't care much about what happened when you were very, very little, but we care about who you are as an attorney, who you are as a person, where you are right now in your career, right? So a couple of tips. Think about yourself and what have you done so far that could be interesting for us to learn. So avoid the references to your childhood. This is the first bullet point that we have in the slide as a reminder. Include a summary for us about who you are, very, very short, and who you are as an attorney. So basically, what are your passions? What are the areas of law that really ignite your passion and make you feel like you want to be 100% invested all of your day in that type of law? So tell me a little bit about what ignites your passion, what energizes you, and why. So if you're passionate about corporate law and M&A, why is that? If you like human rights, why is that? Do you feel you can change the legislation back home in your country after this LL.M? Is there anything that you want to contribute to the world after you do this LL.M? If it's environmental law, if it's intellectual property rights, what is it about those fields that really, really call your attention, right? I say that because the LL.M is a specializing degree. It is a graduate advanced degree. So at this point in your career where you are already a lawyer and you're seeking further education, we as admission officers, and I can speak for my school, the other colleagues may confirm the same, we expect a certain maturity from you. We want to know that you have direction in your life, right? So please tell me, what are your passions? At this point, we expect you to know what areas of law do you like and you don't like. So focus on the ones you want to study and the ones you like, right? What field do you want to study? And then how do you feel that you can contribute to the LL.M program? So if you think about it, at UVA, I read between 600 to 700 applications myself every year, and we only choose about 40 to 50 students. So we really cherry pick, right? We want people who are the perfect fit for our program. So tell me a little bit about what do you bring to the table? What makes you unique in terms of the pool of applicants that we have? How can you contribute to our program? Have you done any leadership activities? Have you been the head of the student council? Have you done moot court competitions? If you are already a practicing lawyer, what are the representative cases you've been in? So we want to see all of that, right? Please explain to us, what are your goals? So basically short-term and long-term goals. So what do you want to do with your career and your life? And how does the LL.M program fit into that plan? Please pay attention to this. At least at UVA, we really look for this in the personal statement. We want to make sure the people who come to our program, they have a direction in life, they know where they want to be, and they understand how our degree will help them get there, right? And the other thing is, every school has a unique culture. It is very much worth your time to spend some time getting to know the school a little bit. Our websites have a wealth of information. We usually have videos that we share. We have information about the campus, the culture, the activities, the city we're located. And I can speak for UVA that if you put a little bit about in your personal statement about why you feel UVA is the school for you. We have a very strong UVA culture for which I'm very proud of and I'm part of it. And when I'm looking at a personal statement, if somebody says, you know, something that is unique about UVA that appeals to them, I know that they have done their research. And that's one of the features we look for in lawyers. You need to be good researchers. You need to be on top of your game when it comes to knowing the institution you're going to join. When you go out and look for law firms to work for, it will be important that the culture of the law firm is a good fit for you. The school is the same way, right? At UVA, we have a small program. We only only take 40 to 50 students a year. Some students, actually most of them, appreciate that it's an individualized attention that we offer. So when you do your personal statement, if you mention that you would like to come and study with us because you found out about this culture that we have and you are excited about that, this shows me that you paid attention. The other tip here would be, if you look for professors, the faculty is always listed in our websites. We're very proud of our faculty. So take a look at the faculty. Which professors do you feel would be the most helpful to you? Make sure you mention that in your personal statement. So if I have a student writing to me and saying, I want to study intellectual property law because Professor Duffy is at UVA. Professor Duffy is one of the people that litigated most of the patent cases before the Supreme Court, right? So that tells me that you are a good lawyer, you like intellectual property law, and you looked at our website and you know that Professor Duffy is our basically patent-in-chief person, right? So that tells me you spent the time, and that is very important. So next slide, please. Thank you. What else? Think about what you want to say before drafting. And again, please remember, this is the only essay of your life where you have all the answers already. You already know all of this. It's just a matter of articulating it well. You have so much time between now and the deadline for the application, which means that there's no reason for you to send us your first draft. We don't want to see your first draft. We actually would like for you to spend time with your draft, actually get a good night of sleep, get rest, review it again and again the next day. Make sure that you read it over and over. Start by doing the prompts on the page. If you look at the very, very blank page and it's daunting to you, think of the questions I told you about today. So who are you? Where do you want to go? What are the areas of law you love? Why are you passionate about them? Why do you feel you're a good fit for this program? And why is the school a good fit for you? If you manage to answer those questions, you already have pretty much 80% of your personal statement written. The next step will just be putting all of that together and articulate it well, right? So if you answer those questions, it's already pretty much, I'm giving you your personal statement for you when it comes to applying to UVA. You already have it by doing this presentation with us today. Use the spell check. You are able to upload that in your computer. Make sure you use US English, and this will catch pretty much most of the typos and mistakes, right? Proofreading is really important. Grammatical errors are absolutely not acceptable at this level in your career. The word choice matters. Make sure you choose action verbs, active voice, pay attention to the verb and subject agreement. So these are basic grammar skills that you need to have. Watch for punctuation errors, make sure your sentences are making sense, read it over and over. If you have to review it several times, it's better to file your application 2 weeks from now as opposed to filing it in a hurry and having mistakes in your personal statement. And last but not least, do not hire anybody to write this for you. I beg you for this, because we can tell, at least I can, and I think most of my colleagues in this call can, we've been doing this for a long time. The minute we look at personal statements that look very much like a cookie cutter type of text, we know that you hired somebody to write for you, and we don't want that, because in the end of the day, you cannot hire that person to come and do exams for you at UVA. We would never advise you to do that, right? So please do not hire anybody. Be confident in your own skills and your own voice and your own passions and your own words, because at this point, if you're understanding what I'm saying, your English will be good enough to write your personal statement. I feel that a lot of times students will hire somebody from outside because they don't have enough confidence that they know how to do this. And believe me, you can do this. Just work with yourself on this English language document. And remember, you have all the answers. This is the document that is about your own life. So you already know all the answers. So let's just polish up the English without having external help. That's what I would love to see from you. Next slide, please. So this,
I think I'm taking it from here.
yes, there was one more slide on my part, so I didn't see it here. Thank you so much for your attention. It was a pleasure to speak with you. We'll talk later during the individual Zoom session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And so, yeah, just to go to continue with Adriana's great points, you need to address some things to think about before you even start writing it. And it might sound trite to think about these. It might sound like kind of silly to actually internalize these questions, but how are you unique? What sets you apart from others? What are your particular strengths? Have you overcome any particular challenges? And you need to find the right balance of, being honest and showing off who you are, but without being too braggy. So that's important to note. And this leads me into another idea. If you're having trouble putting into words your self-value, you can talk to someone who knows you well, both professionally and personally, and just hear what other people, how they view you. And that could be helpful in how you can present yourself in your personal statement. And then this goes back to what Adriana was talking about when you're applying to a specific program and showing your background, what you have, if you're applying for IP, for example, intellectual property, did you take courses during your LLB, or have you been working in the field? So we want to see that connection, but it's also okay if you aren't sure exactly a particular specific area that you want to study, because some schools have more just general LLMs. So if you are not sure, just be honest and explain that in your personal statement. And another thing is, if you are switching careers, like if the reason why you're doing an LLM is to switch from working in human rights, you want to work in human rights and you had been working in IP, that's completely fine. That's a great reason to do an LLM, is to get more knowledge in a specific field. But just make sure that you explain why you're switching fields, what interests you, and why you're switching fields. And for example, we just recently had an applicant who applied and he was switching fields, but he made no mention in his personal statement of why he was switching. He just completely glossed over. So the director of that program actually had him write a whole new personal statement that explained, why he wanted to switch career fields. So it's important to always tie things back to the program that you're applying to. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, this got
that was the slide that I was going to present. Actually, thank you. It got swapped, but I'm happy to say this because I think it's important. Students on this call, please pay attention to this. Every recruiting season, I find at least 2 or 3 personal statements and financial aid request forms where the students are talking about a different school. So for example, last year, I work at the University of Virginia, and there was a student who filed a financial aid form asking us for quite a bit of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. And he said that if he got this money, it would be very helpful for him to study at Georgetown University. Well, I don't work for Georgetown, so I can't give you money to go to Georgetown, right? So he probably filed the same personal statement and the same financial aid form for every school he applied, but he forgot to change the name of the school. This is a grave mistake, okay? So I just wanted to put the slide out there because it's something that will call our attention, and it will tell us that you're really not paying attention to detail here. So thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. We understand that you're applying to more than one school, but it really pops in a bad way when we see that. And not even in the not just in the actual essay, but make sure when you save a document that you remember to update it for that school's name as well, because sometimes I'll see a document that's labeled a different school. So I'm sorry, Justin, can you go back? Wait, I think there was one before. No, I guess. Okay, sorry. Yeah, go. Okay, that's fine. So common pitfalls. Don't just restate your resume or CV. We're gonna see that as well. So you need to make sure your personal statement tells more of a story. I should learn more about you from your personal statement than just where you work or worked and went to school. We can see the admissions committee. We can see all this from your resume, and you don't need to tell us every single work you've done. That if it's not related, you don't need to mention everything in your personal statement. We'll see it on your CV. And so another cliche is I want to help people. Adriana touched on this too. I think it had more to do with I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5. Those are in the same category of being really vague and not saying enough. So I wanted to touch on what Adriana was saying about it's very common for us to get letters that start with, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer since I was a kid. And it's really not a great opening statement, but if that is your truth and that is why something happened that made you want to be a lawyer since you were a kid, explain that experience. Don't just state that that vague sentence. And the same goes with, you've always wanted to help people. Well, how have you done pro bono work? Have you volunteered? Is your current job in a field where you're helping people? So don't just be vague, give actual examples. That's very important. So yeah, these are all just examples. Like, I'm a hard worker. Don't say that. Explain how you're a hard worker. Tell us the story. Next slide, please. So this goes along with what Adriana was saying as well. Let the reader, and by reader, I mean the admissions committee, let the reader know if you're a good fit for their institution. So it really, really does take a good personal statement to a great personal statement by adding in school specific things like specific professors, or even you can Google course catalogs, at least for WCL, for Washington College of Law. You can see it's open to the public to see what courses have been available in all previous semesters and currently. So you can even say, I'm really interested in taking this course by Professor Blank. And that shows that you have put the time in, that you are actually interested in this specific school, and you're not just sending this vague personal statement essay out to every single school. You should definitely, even if it's just a couple little things, for every school you apply to, you should try to include at least one thing that that's school specific. And maybe if you can't find anything, nothing's sticking out to you, maybe it's not even worth applying to that school if there's nothing that's actually exciting you about that school. And so that's good. And then next slide, please. My last one. So this is my last slide, and I just want to end by saying, you as the writer, you need to think about the reader, think about the admissions committee. We read a lot of these, as Adriana said. She reads personally 600 to 700 a year. I think all of us probably do, in that ballpark. And so think about per day, how many, sometimes in the high peaks, how many we have to read. So you want to keep it short, not too short, 1 to 2 pages, go by what that specific school says. But you don't want to make it too long, because if you make it too long, then we're going to start zoning out, and we might not catch the important things that do make you stick out. So it's important to just only put the important things, and don't make it too long, because it can do more harm than good if you make it too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Again, my name is Megan, and I'm going to talk briefly about letters of recommendation, specifically how many letters of recommendation you should submit, and who you should ask to write your recommendation letters. So recommendation letters are an extremely important component of your application file. It's something that the admissions committee is going to look at very closely. So when you're thinking about how many letters to submit and who you should ask to write your letters, it's something you want to consider very closely. So how many letters should you submit? This is going to vary mostly by by which law schools you're applying to. Each LL.M program has their own specific requirements on the number of letters to submit. In addition, some programs will allow applicants to submit additional letters. I'd say most programs require 1 or 2 letters, and then may accept as many as 2, 4, 5, depending on the program. For example, Northeastern, where I work, we require 1 letter of rec, and we will accept up to 2. So how many should you submit? Obviously, you want to make sure that you submit the minimum number required for the program. So if they ask for 2, you definitely want to submit 2. That's fairly obvious. When deciding whether you should submit additional letters, provided the program allows you to submit additional letters, it's important to keep in mind that more isn't always better. The quality of your recommendation letter should always come before quantity. So if you are supposed to submit 2 letters and you've identified 2 recommenders who can speak to your strengths, have agreed to write your letter, and you feel very confident with those 2 recommenders, but you're able to submit up to 4, and you're having difficulty trying to figure out who else to ask, just submit the 2 that are required. That's perfectly fine. I would much rather read the minimum required, the number of required letters that are strong, than read additional letters that don't really seem to offer any additional information, or maybe from somebody who may not be able to speak to your strengths, as well as some of the other recommenders. You also want to pay attention to any specific instructions. If a program does allow you to submit additional letters. Don't submit more than that, particularly if the school allows you to apply directly. So your recommenders will be submitting the letters themselves in some cases. If they say the most, we'll accept up to 3, a maximum of 4, don't submit 5. It will not help. It could really only be looked at negatively. So who should write your letters of recommendation? You should always select recommenders who know you either academically or professionally and can personally speak to your strengths as an LL.M applicant and your ability to succeed in a graduate legal program. Choosing someone who knows you well is always better than choosing someone for their position or title who might not know you particularly well and can't really speak to your strengths. So in terms of what that recommender might look like academically, this could be a law professor or advisor who can speak specifically to your academic abilities. Professionally, this could be a supervisor or a boss who oversaw your work and knows you in a supervisory capacity. You should also be mindful of any programmatic requirements for recommendations. Some programs might require recent graduates of law school to submit 1 or more letters from a law professor, and other programs might require that if you've been working for a certain period of time, that your recommendation letter comes from a employer. Now, if you've been out of law school for some years and you're finding it difficult to get to identify an academic recommender, and there isn't a specific requirement for that program as to who you ask, I would always say that it's perfectly fine not to have an academic recommender if you've been out of school for a certain period of time. So just speaking from my experience, my program does not require academic or professional. It can be either. So if someone's been out of school for say 5, 10 or more years, I would see nothing wrong with it being a professional recommendation rather than an academic recommendation. But of course, this is something that you always want to double check with the specific programs that you're applying to, because their requirements might vary. Is there anyone you should never ask to write a recommendation for you? Yes, friends, family members, or anyone who knows you in a strictly personal capacity. They should never write a recommendation letter. These recommendations are not particularly helpful, and in some cases, they might not even be accepted. So you want to certainly ask people who know you either academically or professionally, never in a strictly personal capacity. So I am now going to turn this over to my colleague, Gabrielle Goodwin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. I am continuing the topic of letters of recommendation, how to request a letter of recommendation, and specifically how and when to contact your recommender and what materials and information to provide. Next slide, please. Okay, so how and when to contact your recommender. You should make a formal request in a manner that is appropriate to your situation and the relationship that you have with this person. It may be an in-person request if you are currently working or studying with this person. It could be these days more often by email. Even a phone call would be fine if that is the kind of relationship that you have. You should definitely request letters of recommendation well in advance of an application deadline. People are busy, and it's not that they don't want to write you a letter of recommendation. It's just that there are so many things to do that having at least 4 to 6 weeks to get your letter together and coordinate with the addresses that you provide it's really the minimum that you should provide. And then you would want to follow up with additional information immediately. So what I mean is, in your first request, you are asking, will they write a letter of recommendation? And if they agree to, then follow up immediately with the additional information that is needed in order to write a good letter for you. One quick note, and that you may come across, especially if you're applying through, say, the LSAC system in the United States, if you are asked to indicate whether or not you waive access to the letter of recommendation, that means you will not see that letter of recommendation. Make sure that you answer yes, you do waive the right to see that letter of recommendation. That allows the recommender to know that you won't see the letter and that they can be as objective and honest as possible. And that's a real benefit for you and for anyone reading that letter. Next slide. I have an example here of an email that was sent to me recently, just to give you an idea of what I found to be particularly helpful from this former student. So this student sent this email, reminded me of who they were when they were in the LL.M program and that they took classes with me, which classes. And it didn't hurt that they said that they loved my classes. That's nice to hear. The student expressed their enthusiasm for Maurer School of Law, which is where I teach and work, and let me know that they passed the Washington, D.C. bar exam, which was great news and a piece of information that I would find useful when writing a letter for this student. The student then, or I should say former student, then let me know why they needed this letter, what they were planning to do, and gave me just enough information to know what I would be doing, what kind of letter I would be writing, and then asked if I would be open to writing them a letter of recommendation. And if I were to agree, they would, of course, send all the additional information, documents, and details for schools that they would be applying to let me know that that would be forthcoming. And this was a very nice email and an easy way for me to say, yes, of course, I do remember this student. The information helped to remind me of this student and that I would be happy to write a letter. The student then did send me a very nice list of information and the schools and addresses. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. Okay, so the materials and information to provide. These are, I think, the minimum of what you should provide if they are relevant to your situation. So if you can provide a cover letter that gives your contact information in case the letter writer needs to respond and reach out to you, a table or list of all the deadlines covering the letters that you need, your career aspirations and the type of program you're applying for, any information or points you would like your letter writer to emphasize. It's not a problem at all if someone tells me and explains that they are really excited and proud of certain accomplishments and they would like those to be noted. That actually is really helpful for me when writing a letter. A summary of any work or projects that you did with the writer, including those dates to help, especially if it's been a long time, that helps to remind the letter writer of who you are and what you did. And then any other information that you deem relevant. So I think this cover letter that provides all of this information is a really great help and keeps you organized and helps your letter writer be organized so that they can write the best letter for you. Other materials to provide would include a statement of purpose. So the statement of purpose that you're actually sending to the school. If you have a draft of that available, that's really helpful. Your resume, so that especially again, if it's been a while since this person has seen you and you've done some really great things since the last time you were their student or their employee. Transcripts, if that's appropriate, sometimes just reminding someone if they were if you were in their class, that how you did in that class is possible. Sometimes it's not appropriate to send full transcripts, and that's fine. A link to the program description of where you'll be applying can be really helpful if your letter writer is trying to match your background and qualifications and what they know about you to the program that you're applying to. And then a link and instructions for how to submit the letter of recommendation. You'll find that this may vary from country to country. In the United States, I mentioned before LSAC, LSAC. This is one way that we can submit letters of recommendation, and it's a very specific way to do that. Other countries or other schools might request letters to be submitted a different way, and you need to make sure that your letter writer has those instructions very clearly. And then any forms that should be submitted with a letter to help with so that those are available and easy for your letter writer to access. So I think that is a nice package of information and materials that will make your letter writer's job easier. And believe me, I write many, many letters every year, and the easier it is to write them, the happier I am. So it's really wonderful if you can provide this kind of information for your writers. Thank you, and we're moving on to the next speaker.
Hello, I'm Jason Smith again from University of Wisconsin Law School. Just wanted to talk briefly about the application in general and submitting the materials that we've talked about here today. You can submit through LSAC for most schools. Some schools, in fact, require it. And I'd recommend that option for students who are applying to many different schools, because you can send these materials to one place. They'll help you process them and get them to the individual schools that you're applying. The one issue is that it can be quite expensive in terms of fees for that. So there are a lot of schools who will allow you to apply directly to those schools. So I would recommend that if there's just one or two schools that you want to apply to, they can give you the option to apply to them directly. Their instructions will be slightly different, of course, and they may have different materials or additional addenda that they'll want you to submit. And in those things, there can be some shortcomings that you may feel you need to submit in order to talk about why you had one bad semester or something like that. One of the things that not all schools do, but we do ask here at Wisconsin, is the character and fitness questions. And what those are, I'll read off what we ask here at Wisconsin, but we ask, have you ever been dismissed, dropped, suspended, expelled, disciplined, or placed on probation by any college, university, or educational institution? Another question we ask is, have you ever been cited, arrested, convicted, pled guilty, or no contest to, or forfeited bail for any criminal, civil, or ordinance violation, excluding only minor traffic violations? Complicated legal questions that if you answer yes to either of those questions, we require you to provide an explanation in detail of what happened in the situation, why did it happen. What you'll want to do is, if you have a situation where you're answering yes to that question, you definitely want to disclose it. And use this as an opportunity to explain what happened in detail so that the admissions committee is aware of it. And the reason this is important is if you have hopes of taking a bar exam in the future in the US, they will most certainly do a background check and a character and fitness check for you. And oftentimes, whatever crime you committed or problem you had with the previous university often is outweighed by lying about it afterwards. It's not the crime itself, it's the lying about it afterwards that's the problem. So I'll give you an example. We had a student at one time who, when he was younger, he had too much to drink. He made a mistake, got into a fight. The police got involved, and in addition to the fight, he, resisted arrest from the police officer. And of course, this is something you would think, I don't want to put this on an application to a place I want to get into where I want to be a lawyer. But the truth of the matter is everybody makes mistakes. And, for this student, if they would have explained the situation, told us that they were young, made a mistake, what the consequences were, what they learned from the experience, we probably would have admitted the student anyway. Unfortunately, the student didn't disclose this in his addenda. And when he went to go take the bar exam, he was caught that he had lied about the previous situation he had. And, it was very unfortunate for him because he did really well in our program. He was on the way to, have, a future career that would have allowed him to have admission to a bar in the US, and he lost that opportunity because he lied on the application. Another thing is, with the academic questions, sometimes you might have been put on academic probation for a semester. This is more common than you think. I can speak from personal experience that when I was an undergraduate, I was my first in family to go to college, and I did not adjust well in the first semester. And so I had on my record that I was placed on probation. And in future applications, I addressed that and explained the situation. We've had students who have, had these issues for a variety of reasons, death in the family, there was financial issues or concerns. It's better to just be upfront, explain the situation in detail, and the strength of your overall application will shine through when you do that. I'll turn it over to my colleague June now.
Great, thank you, Jason. I'm June Sakamoto from the University of California, Hastings Law in San Francisco. And I know that this is a lot of information that you are trying to digest. This is the second to last slide. I'm the second to last speaker, so we're almost there. For the resumes, it's an important part of the application that is often overlooked, I think, by applicants. But as you heard from Emma and Adriana, the personal statement really is where we get to know you as a person, but we're just getting to know a piece of you. We know that there is so much more to you than what you can fit in 2 to 5 pages, double spaced. So the resume is really where you get to shine. So if there are other things you want us to know about, I promise you, we read your applications from cover to cover. Every single page of it gets read, and often by more than one person. So the resume is where you get to shine. It's where you get to be a person who has interests outside of the law even. It's where you get to shine and show us your history of volunteerism, any languages that you speak, your hobbies, your, anything that you think will help us get to know you better and to stand out among the others who are applying. Somebody also mentioned that we are looking for a good fit. So I know that you all are looking for the right law school for you. We are also looking for students who we think will fit into our communities as well. So for example, if I see a resume that is just filled with someone who's interested in maritime law, I think it's wonderful, but we don't have a maritime law program here, so I'm not sure that we would be the best fit for you. But if you are interested in human rights or intellectual property or technology, and it's all over your resume, then that is yet another piece of the puzzle that I would be really interested to look at for fit. One question I get, it's not a big deal, but I know that in other places, people put their photos on their resumes. In the United States, we don't have photos. It doesn't hurt you or help you either way. So the format that you are most comfortable with is fine. I would say if you have a choice, don't put your photo because it is not customary here, but do make your resume look as professional as possible. So along with the personal statements, with the grammatical errors and the spelling mistakes and the misformats, we look at that as well on the resume. So just make sure it looks good and is grammatically correct. So scholarships, it is another one of the big questions that all of us get. We are aware that law schools in the United States are expensive, and it breaks all of our hearts, I think, when we get emails from candidates saying that they just can't afford to come. We do everything we can to make law school as affordable as possible for students from around the world. And one of the things many of our schools, I believe that all of our schools here offer, are institutional scholarships that are given from our personal law schools to applicants. Many of our law schools offer merit-based scholarships just based on the quality of your application. Many law schools don't require an extra application or form to be eligible for those. So definitely look at people's law school websites to see if there are merit-based applications available. Some of our law schools might also have separate merit-based scholarships that do require another piece of information. So definitely take a look at that. We have just one scholarship where we do actually ask for people to apply separately. So make sure you are looking at what all of the individual schools are requiring. Need-based scholarships are also available from many of our law schools. So if there are extra requirements to qualify for a need-based grant, please do make sure that you are looking at the websites. And if you have any questions, law school admissions counselors are here for you. We are here to help answer those questions. Never hesitate to reach out via email, Zoom, phone, however you are most comfortable reaching out, but just ask us. It never hurts to ask. And for the most part, all of us in admissions are incredibly nice, and we really do want to make this process as smooth as possible for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, June. So as a reminder, I'm Justin Swinsick. I have the privilege of bringing up the rear of the presentation here. So thank you, everybody, for sticking with us. I'm just going to talk really briefly about some things that you're going to want to think about when approaching English language proficiency tests, as well as preparing your transcripts for your application. It shouldn't come as a surprise that all of our institutions are going to ask you to demonstrate your level of English as a part of your application. We are academic institutions, and it is our responsibility to make sure that all of our students here are set up for success. And especially for the LL.M program, a major part of that is making sure that you have the sufficient level to engage in the classroom, prepare the readings, and perform at a sufficiently high level in the program. So we will be asking you to demonstrate your level of English as a part of your application. And the most common format of that is going to be some kind of proficiency test. There's a lot of them out there, and it's going to depend from school to school which ones are accepted. But I think it's a fair bet that at least the schools here are going to be accepting at least the TOEFL and the IELTS as kind of a baseline. And then some schools may accept other tests as well. So I'm going to speak a little bit more generally about the other two. But I highly recommend looking at every institution to see what they require, because it can depend from school to school. So if you are thinking about the TOEFL and the IELTS, the most common format for the TOEFL is going to be the internet-based test. In some circumstances around the globe, they still do allow the paper-based test, but again, it's going to depend from school to school. You also now have different options for at-home tests. Given the pandemic, there have been a lot of changes to testing formats, and I know a lot of schools have been quick to adopt accepting the different at-home exams. So again, make sure that you're talking to schools, checking with them to see which ones that they are offering, because it may be easier for you at this point to do it from home if they're still not offering TOEFL in person in your home country. But again, make sure that you are checking that. In terms of getting ready for the TOEFL or IELTS, I do recommend preparing for those exams. They're not something that you just want to walk into. Even if you do have a strong level of English, it's something that you can still prepare for, get ready for, because you don't want to be surprised by a particular section and then have that surprise hurt your overall score, because these things do matter to us in admissions committees. We want to make sure that we're admitting students to the program that have sufficiently high levels of English. And you don't want your non-preparation to affect your score when you actually could have come out with a much better score. So make sure you're looking at different ways to prepare for it, understand what the different sections are and how to go about preparing for the exam itself, just to make sure that you give yourself the best shot possible. Now, in terms of minimum scores, that's really going to depend from school to school. Some schools have very, very hard lines, and that under a particular score, they are not going to look at applications. Other schools may have more flexible rules. Some schools may have minimum requirements that are a little bit lower, others higher. You want to make sure that when you're applying to schools, you know what those minimums are and what the expectations from the schools are, to give yourself, again, the best shot at admission to a particular program. You can also reach out to the individual schools and talk to them about those minimum requirements, because they may list a particular minimum on school, but in talking to the school, you may find that there are other ways to demonstrate your level of English. And so engagement with individual schools is always a great idea, not only for the English proficiency side, but for any questions that you may have. I know that any one of my colleagues at these schools would be more than happy to talk to you about their applications and their programs. For those of you that may be on the lower end of a TOEFL or IELTS score, you may also want to think about some of the other two-year programs that exist at schools in the United States. There's a very robust offering of schools that have programs specifically designed for students that need a little bit more support with their English language abilities when they come into a program. So I would highly recommend looking at those programs as well for those of you that may need a little bit more support when you're coming into a program itself. Some of you on the higher end may be considering waivers or asking for waivers from schools. Again, that's going to be very, very individual from school to school, and you're going to want to reach out to the schools and make sure that you're reviewing their policies on their website. And one recommendation I have on this side is that if you are requesting a waiver, whether it be because of your experience or time spent in an English-speaking country, if you're denied the waiver, I don't recommend necessarily fighting that denial so much. If a school does not believe that you have the sufficient level of English language skills and they want to confirm that with a test, listen to the school, take the test, and submit the test score, because your application will be just that much stronger, especially if you're somebody that does have a high level of English and you can demonstrate that through a test. So those are a few of my recommendations when approaching English language proficiency tests. Now, With your transcripts, my first suggestion is going to be to start as early as you possibly can in requesting those transcripts from the institutions of higher education that you attended, because it can take some time for your schools to not only produce those transcripts, but also give time to have them translate, because you're going to have to submit translations of your transcripts to the schools in English of the schools that you've attended. So we're not talking about high schools here. We're talking about your university, master's programs, anything that goes beyond your high school. Our schools are going to want to see those transcripts. Now, in terms of the submission of your transcripts, it's going to depend a little bit on whether or not you're applying through LSAC or if you're applying directly to the school. Now, if you're applying directly to a school and that school does allow you to submit your materials, you're going to have to follow their rules specifically. They may require you to have your transcripts sent to them directly from your institution and never been handled by you, or they may allow you to submit it without coming directly from the school. But you're going to want to confirm that with the law school that you're applying to. Now, if you're applying through LSAC, you are going to have your transcripts sent to them directly from your home institution. This is just a safety measure to prevent any kind of fraud. We're not suggesting that you individually are going to try and alter your transcript, but of course we want to make sure that we put up as many protections as possible, and this is one of them. So you're going to have your transcripts sent to LSAC from your home institution. And if a school requires you to go through the International Transcript Authentication Service, that's just going to add a little bit more time to the review process and to when your application would be complete. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep that in mind as well when you're submitting your transcripts. In terms of addressing low grades or any kind of aberrations in your transcripts, you can certainly submit addenda or make a comment on it in your personal statement, because certain things, as Jason was mentioning, happen in life, and you want to let us know about that. If you were dealing with personal issues during a particular semester or a quarter and it affected your grades, you want to make sure that you're addressing those things so that the admissions committee has a full picture of who you are and what you've gone through during your education. Another way of addressing any kind of issues with lower grades is obviously gaining more professional experience. Because as you are more removed from your university experience and the more experience you have overall, the less weight that is going to play for an admissions committee. So there are a few different ways to approach anything that might be considered wrong with a transcript or lower grades or any kind of issues that an admissions committee might have. So with that, I think we're going to stop the presentation here and we're going to pass it back to our friends at Education USA to address any questions that you guys may have for all of us.
Great, thank you so much. We do have a few questions, so I will just go over a few and then I'll just give you the time to answer those. Most of these questions are regarding letters of recommendation. One question that we've been seeing often: how long must be this letter of recommendations? I don't know if anyone would like to answer.
I answered that in the chat as well, and others may have a different view on this, but I typically write a 1-page letter of recommendation and maybe 1.5 pages if I know the person really well and have a lot to say. I don't think anything more than that is necessarily helpful. So I would limit it to a page to 1.5 pages.
Great, thank you. I noticed that you answered most of these questions, so I'll just go over probably a couple more. and then we'll just go to the breakout rooms.
Randy, there's one that I thought was really interesting was,
Mhm.
what are things you don't like to see in a recommendation letter? I thought
Yeah.
that one was really good. So if maybe one or two of you want to get that one.
I'll answer, but I would invite my colleagues to answer this as well. I would say what I don't like to see are general statements that make it clear that the writer doesn't actually know you that well. It's not helpful and it's a waste of a letter. The other thing I would say is if someone, because these are anonymous and objective, if someone writes not a very good letter, they say kind of mediocre things about you, what that tells me is you didn't do your due diligence, or you didn't really check to see, would this person write you a good letter? And if the letter writer is being honest and says, I don't think I could write you a very good letter, that's really helpful information for you. And you should then find someone that could write a good letter, that knows you well and can speak to your strengths.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing, that let's just say, you have a family friend that has a really high title, a judge, but they don't really know you. It's better to have somebody that knows you write the letter than have it be very vague just because it's signed by some high titled name. So that's something to keep in mind too.
I wanted to put in a point at the same, I totally agree with Gabrielle and Emma. And the one thing I was going to say about something we don't want to see, at UVA, we require all the letters to be in letterhead and to be signed by the person's, actually by pen, not just the typed, name. And again, in the last cycle, we received a letter from somebody who signed as a judge, but the letter literally had like 3 sentences. And I believe it's possible that the judge really wrote that. Also, we are very mindful that, depending on the country the person is coming from, maybe the judges, the prosecutors, the lawyers who are your recommenders may not speak English. In that case, be aware of that. And it's better to choose somebody who can actually write in English or use a translation, an official translation service of some sort, because a letter that has no letterhead, no signature, and just 3 sentences, even if the person says he's a judge writing it, we completely disregard it. So at UVA, we handle this with kindness. So what I do is I personally reach out to the candidate and I let them know that that letter was not sufficient, was not valid, and we give you a chance to supplement it. But the reality is we would like for this to be filed correctly the first time. So letterhead, signature, very important in English.
I think those are great points, everybody. I think since we are where I am, it is now 8 o'clock. We've been in an hour of this session. It's been great. Thank you so much. It was a lot of information. We have good questions. We have people who have a lot more questions, and I think it would be a great opportunity to continue with them in your own Zoom rooms. So I have already started to put the links here in the chat. The registered students have received these in their emails. We will keep this session open for a couple, 5 or 10 minutes, just so everyone can get the links that they need. But I just wanted to say thank you to our representatives for closing out the Education USA Western Hemisphere 2021 LL.M webinar series. It has been a pleasure having you here. And Yandi, thank you for hosting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Education USA. Thanks, students. And thank you so much, colleagues. This was a great presentation. It's always good to see everybody. Thank you so much.